he would say, what are your unique and unequaled assets?
Mm-hmm.
And so individuals who show us their unique and unequaled assets are really strong applicants, because we're trying to craft a class of very diverse individuals. And we talk about diversity very broadly speaking, right? Not just race and ethnicity, but from lived experiences diverse. Because you want this microcosm of the real world,
Right.
right? We're trying to create a microcosm of the real world, but in a way that that offers each individual in that class an experience that they would not have had they not been a part of a
Yeah.
collective.
Good Monday morning. Have you ever wondered how successful and happy people got their starts? Every success story begins somewhere, often more humbly than you'd expect. I'm Leilani Brown, host of Your First Job, the podcast. And I'm so excited to be talking to my good friend, Shari Hubert, who is the Dean of Admissions at the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University, and so many other things. Shari, how you doing?
Oh my gosh, Leilani, I'm so excited to be here with you today.
I am too, for so many reasons. So let's just get right into it. I gave a quick introduction and I didn't really give the full introduction as I know you, because I know you well. But can you describe for our listeners what you do?
Sure. So I am the Associate Dean of Admissions for Duke University's Fuqua School of Business. I am a fur mother. I am an advocate, passionate about animals. I am a novice art collector, learning a lot from you.
I love all the descriptions. And how many fur babies do you have?
I have one adopted fur baby, but I have fostered 10 and 10 little doggies during the pandemic.
Yeah, I want to talk about that when we get into it, but that's quite the description and a lot of responsibility too. So we're catching you at the beginning of another year of Duke's admission activity leading into the fall. This is probably the busiest time, so thank you so much for taking the time.
Anything for you.
Thank you. Talk to me about admissions, just generally the landscape and the work in admissions these days, because it's changed a lot. I would say the volume has changed, the approach, recruiting has changed. Working in committee, I'd imagine you have more tools now, but that's not changed, but you have more tools. Talk to me about the work inside of an admission cycle.
Yeah. So, and it's a little different when you look at admissions at the graduate school level, especially within the MBA space or the graduate management education space, business degree space, compared to undergraduate admissions, which is a whole world in and of itself.
Yeah.
So my area of specialty is in graduate admissions, in particular, graduate management admissions business degree. So we're talking specialized business masters, MBAs, that's the more traditional degree, executive MBAs. There's such a huge proliferation of the number and types of degrees that you can get now that is very different than 20 years ago or so. The landscape is very competitive, especially as it pertains to the ability to attract, recruit, and then retain talent to individuals. There's so many more ways in which this generation thinks about learning that doesn't necessarily necessitate getting a degree, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do micro credentials and certificates and learning on the job. So there are so many different ways now in terms of competing with the MBA market or with the graduate degree market. But then there's masters of public policy. There's still, of course, law school. There's still medical school. There's still the traditional terminal degrees that we all think of, and those are still strong. But it's been challenging, but still very rewarding. I mean, I kind of fell into this. My career path has been very fortuitous, but this is literally the best job I've ever had. I feel like my career has come full circle. And for me, it's about making dreams come true. I really benefited from the value of an MBA, and it has literally opened up doors I would not have known, were even available to me.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's about giving people options, allowing you to chart your own course, because it allowed me to chart my own course and gaining the confidence to do that, living by my own standards and not someone else's. And so again, the degree is something someone can't take away from you, right? And so I think when people are looking at, do I decide to go and get my graduate degree, especially more of a business degree like an MBA, they're thinking about those kinds of decisions. What's the ROI going to be? It's very costly now compared
Mhm.
to in the past, and I think
Yeah.
that the generations have changed, and how we measure ROI, our sensitivity to being willing to take on debt has changed.
Hmm.
And so we are, seeing stronger emphasis in terms of demand for scholarships, especially, for those who may be from first generation backgrounds like myself. I was first generation college. Women, individuals, student individuals of color, individuals who, in the marketplace, perhaps there are inequity issues. And so making the decision to, forego a salary and commit to 2 years, 1 year to invest in yourself is not a decision that you take lightly. But I
Right.
can tell you that for those who do, it is literally life transforming.
I'm,
And
I'm glad. I'm glad we started there because there is, and I don't mean to be controversial, but maybe just a little bit provocative with the elephant in the room, which is what is the proposition today of an MBA? Given that there are so many different learning opportunities and learning modalities and value of on the job, and people that are moving ahead without an MBA. By the way, I'd still believe in the graduate degree. I have one. I know you have one. But I wonder what is the value proposition, and how do you communicate that not necessarily to the applicant because they know it if they're applying, but how does an applicant convey that that has differentiated them for a new career opportunity?
mhm. I think, I mean, you're right. You can start a business without an MBA. If you think about founders, so perhaps they don't have them, but the people they have managing and growing and
Right.
scaling their businesses tend to have them, right? So
Mhm.
it's a set of it's a credential that says to someone, this person has the ability to think critically. Person has the ability to work successfully as a member of a team. At Fuqua, at least, one of our values is we call it Team Fuqua. It's this the ability to bring out the strengths in others in order to move towards common purpose. And in business, no one does anything alone, right? It is Organizations are made up of individuals and people who have to work in concert collectively to move and drive a business forward. And so, an MBA really helps to solidify those types of skills. It helps with the ability to build confidence, your communication skills, your confidence, your ability. So, those kind of softer skills, some people say those softer skills, but those are the skills that you need to really, that grease kind of your ability to really navigate unwritten rules, navigate business in a way that allows you to be successful. And because it is a credential that is world known, and is pretty consistent in terms of if you have an MBA, there's a set of courses and curriculum that's pretty set and standard, at least your first year, and then your second year taking electives, and that's really where you can focus in terms of where you want to specialize. But that kind of core curriculum gives you that baseline of business toolkit and
Mhm.
business skills that you need to be successful in any kind of large organization. And even if you're an entrepreneur, in order to build an organization, right, and think about your human capital, managing individuals, leading others, thinking strategically about the vision of your organization, how to get from, the strategy to execution, the operations. I mean, all of those tactical aspects you also learn
Yeah.
through an MBA program. And so it's not for everyone. And I think you're right. Like today's generation, they're finding ways. to still have very fulfilling careers without it. But I think that there's enough, tested value in that degree, and stood the test of time, that in order to grow a business, scale a business, manage a business, I think that particular degree and the skills that you learn and the relationships, I think that's another thing that's really key in terms of the ROI. You're developing these really strong networks and relationships that will follow you throughout the longevity of your career.
Yeah.
And those tend to be even more valuable than perhaps what you learn like in the classroom in the moment, right?
Right.
Those are what you kind of take with you throughout the longevity of your career.
And yet you still have many, many people, hundreds of thousands of young applicants, or maybe even not so young, applying to get the MBA in whatever form, an executive MBA. And to you and to your colleagues, I say first, congratulations on two fronts. So recently you had, or three fronts rather, you had the greatest number of applicants in the history of the school. Am I
Hmm.
getting that right?
That's
You
right.
also have a distinguished STEM program within the larger framework, and you most recently achieved gender parity in your daytime MBA program. So congratulations on all of that. It doesn't happen without being strategic. Before we get to the gender equity question, though, I do want to ask this question just generally and broadly. What makes a good applicant? Because I know you see hundreds of thousands of applicants over the course of your career. You've been in other places as well, and you've served in a volunteer capacity for some other organization. What makes a good applicant to B school?
I would say someone who understands themselves, why this particular degree, and it doesn't have to be the MBA, it can be a specialized master's, it can be any particular discipline. But why am I pursuing this course of education and learning? And why am I being willing to invest in myself through the pursuit of this degree? So having that sense of self, that's, having taken the time to self-reflect, and someone who also has enough lived experience and professional experience to make the most of this particular 2 years or 1 year transformational experience, but also to be able to contribute to someone else's learning.
Mm,
In most business schools these days, you need work experience, and you need at least 2 or so years or more of work experience. And the reason that you need that is because the learning in a graduate business program is very different than an undergrad. It's less lecture, it is more Socratic method, it's more case-based. It's really about providing frameworks and using cases that then draw upon people's actual lived experience and applied experience. And so you need to have had that. You need to have had some meaningful experience, contributed and had an impact already,
mhm.
demonstrated impact in order to then be able to contribute meaningfully to your classmates and peers in the classroom, and for other people to gain value out of that experience that you bring.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think people who understand that, so people who have, understand the timing, like when's the right time for me to be pursuing this degree? Have I had enough requisite experience that's meaningful experience that others would find valuable? Am I at a point or inflection in my career or life where I think I've pushed the boundaries to the extent that I can, and this additional learning or this next stage will allow me to then catapult into whatever direction I want, right?
Right.
With the experience I'm having in the business school program. Um, I think those make really good applicants. And then people who are willing to be a little bit vulnerable and to share their authentic self with the admissions committee. We're human beings. We're called the admissions, not the rejection committee, for a reason, right? So we really are rooting for people, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
We also want you to be successful in our programs. And so people who are willing to bring their authentic self and show us all the facets, show us how they are. Um, it's interesting. I had a mentor who you know, and he would say he would talk about the dean at the former dean of the of Georgetown's McDonough School of Business and former president, current president of Morehouse. He would say, what are your unique and unequaled assets?
Hmm.
And so individuals who show us their unique and unequaled assets are really strong applicants, because we're trying to craft a class of very diverse individuals. And we talk about diversity very broadly speaking, right? Not just race and ethnicity, but from lived experiences, diverse. Because you want this microcosm of the real world,
Right.
right? We're trying to create a microcosm of the real world, but in a way that um, that that offers each individual in that class an experience that they would not have had they not been a part of a
Yeah.
collective,
Right.
right?
I so want to ask you and be just a little nosy if, and it would be inappropriate, but I might try to ask it anyway. So, has there ever been a candidate that you can describe, or a set of candidates that you can describe, certainly in the whole of your career, maybe 5 years ago, so not an incoming class. So if anyone's listening to this and entering Duke, she's not talking about you. But a real breakthrough in terms of distinct, not academic, not career, but just their application stood out in such a way that it it was compelling. You are all converging on the uniqueness of this individual. Is there anything that you can share without giving too much away? And I'll continue to add to the question as you think about it.
Okay.
I'm often asked to write letters of recommendation for people, and I'm always struck by trying to be as meaningfully specific as I can, true to the person, to really figure out what am I going to say based on my own experience to recommend them enthusiastically.
Mhm.
So, any thoughts
Yeah,
on
I mean,
break, or sets of characteristics for breakthrough?
I can share sets of characteristics that come to mind. So we have a really fun essay. We've had it for years, like literally over 10 years, probably 15 years, maybe even 20, called the 25 Random Facts essay. And it's really unique. It's very Fuqua, and it allows us in one essay to get 25 essays in one question, I should say, right? Because literally you get people who give you all kinds of things, like people who will talk about their favorite animals, their favorite places they've traveled, things that they are afraid of, their parents and their parents' backgrounds, talents that they have, uh, the addictions. We've had people talk about being, having family addictions, they themselves overcoming addictions,
Yeah,
being abandoned as children. We have people talking about parents who have been incarcerated and how that's really built their character and strength and perseverance. We've had people talk about saving other people's lives. We had, one person comes to mind, and she created a nonprofit to help self sex traffic, to help um,
combat.
prevent self
Mhm.
trafficking. Um, we've had, I mean, people have done such I am in awe. People have done such remarkable things in their lives, and this question allows us to understand um, what makes them them, you know. And it can be from the really frivolous things to really serious, things, right? So there's not one example that I can think of,
Right.
but if someone is willing to be a bit vulnerable and show us not just the shiny things that are part of what makes their makeup, but the things that they've been challenged by, the things that perhaps they've I would say within reason, right? So I would caution people not to be, not to talk about some, I mean, we ask them some ethical dilemmas sometimes, but there's within reason. We don't want to have, we don't want to know
Right.
all of your
Right.
secrets and
Keep a
your
little keep
fetishes
a little
and things.
something to
Right. We
yourself.
don't need to know your fetishes and things like that. But you know, if you can talk about a challenge in a way in which you've overcome it, then almost anything is not off
Yeah.
limit.
Yeah.
you know.
So you get to gender parity. That's exciting. Were you How close were you in recent years? Did you have just a breakthrough? And how are you communicating the benefits of that to your colleagues and to the school and to the student body as they come in?
So last year we were close 2 years ago. We are at 48%, the closest we'd ever gotten. And then we dipped last year to 44. And it was one of the smaller classes as well. And then now so this year we jumped quite high to
Mhm.
51%. And it was due to an increase in applications. So, to your question about the value of an MBA, for a number of years, it's kind of been waning down, but then domestically, right? But the applications have increased across the industry internationally. So you'd see a lot of interest from countries like India and even in most recently Nigeria, across all schools, right? And so this year, the industry was really helped by the fact that domestic applications increased. And just so you know, applications are kind of inverse to they're kind of counter cyclical to the economy. So when the economy is down, applications tend to go up to business
Yeah.
schools, and then vice versa. And because our last year we saw some layoffs and just some softening a little bit, I think that's helped drive the domestic market.
Yeah.
And so, we had an increase in applications. We had increase in yield. So just we were able to actually the offers that we made more accepted. And so we're really fortunate and excited.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a couple of years until we really know what 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 the right triggers are and tactics and things like that. But for right now, we'll take it, and
Yeah.
it will be it's a year to year game. So just
Right.
because we're
It
up
could
now,
change at any
the
time.
change absolutely.
Do
Yes.
you think, and I'm going to ask you this question as an individual, as a woman, woman to woman, do you think that the increase in B school applications by women is an effort for those individuals to level the playing field, get the credential, and level the playing field with respect to opportunities in the future? Or is this just some, you know, dumb luck?
No, no, it's absolutely that, right? So level the playing field from the perspective of gaining entree into these great careers, also progressing up through the careers and the ranks, but then also gaining traction in terms of financial equity,
Hmm.
right? And getting paid what we deserve to get paid in the
Hmm.
marketplace, because that's
Hmm.
still not equitable.
Right.
It's getting closer, but it's still not equitable, right?
So if the
But it
credentials are on
start
par and the responsibilities on par, then we might suggest that it's going to be equal. And it's still not necessarily
still
equal, but
it's still not, but it's not that it starts with business schools, because there are plenty of women in the workforce now who aren't planning on getting a degree, don't have a degree, and are doing
mhm,
fine, right?
mhm,
But it's the pipeline, like business schools put out the pipeline of women that then hopefully are in the position to be in more of the C-suite path,
sure.
right?
Sure.
Because of their MBA. Mhm.
Now you're in your dream job, which I would imagine was not in your dreams, but it's a dreamy job. Right. You had,
That's
I
a
mean,
great way of putting it. I did
right.
not
Like,
dream of doing this
you didn't dream of doing it,
when I
but
was a little girl.
it's a dreamy job. What did you think you were going to be doing growing up in Indianapolis? What was your first job, and what did you think that you would be doing as you
Yeah,
entered the world?
well, when I wanted to be a veterinarian, believe it or not.
I can believe it.
That's what you probably can. You probably can. Um,
Yes, Dr.
but
Doolittle. What did you really want to do? Go ahead.
too little. Girl, can I tell you, my first job was pharmaceutical sales. I graduated college and I was a French major. And I was also in the inroads. And so I had these internships through every summer. I decided not to go with my interning company. And so I found myself my last year saying, okay, I got to start trying to find a job here. So I did the very traditional campus recruiting on campus and was really fortunate to um, get an offer from Merck and Company. So my first job was in the pharmaceutical industry. I loved it because it was this like 2 to 3 month training program. They sent
Mhm.
me to New Jersey and they trained me, they put me up. I had a company car. They gave me a company car. They gave me a laptop. Yeah, back then we did have laptops. They gave me a laptop, company car, and a book of business. And they placed me in Boston. So I went from New Hampshire to Boston. And I remember I had the entire territory of Boston. I lived in South Weymouth, but had the entire territory of Boston. I remember one of my areas was South Boston, and one of the first visits I had made to a physician in South Boston. Now, mind you, this was 1993, and he said, "Yeah," he might have said "young lady." I don't even know. He might have said "young lady." You do not want to be here after 5 o'clock. So I would just, or something like you don't have going to be here after 5 o'clock, or just make sure that you do your visits in the early afternoon before sunset. And I was like, okay. I don't think I went back to South Boston.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was a different world. It was a
Yeah.
different world in the
Yeah.
in the early 90s.
Yeah.
But that was my first job. And I worked for Merck for 5 years. I was 3 years in the field doing pharmaceutical sales, and then got promoted inside. They call it going in-house to they were starting a call center, and it was going to be based in West Point, Pennsylvania, which at that time was where kind of their marketing kind of
Mhm.
headquarters were. And so I went to help create this call center. And can I tell you, when I got inside, yeah, I did that rotation. Then I got another promotion to a managed care marketing role. Um, And at that point, my new boss said, Sherry, you are woefully underpaid compared to your peers. So I had not known it. So she had to really advocate to get me up to a level of these new peers of mine. And I had no idea that all these years, and by that time I was probably 4 years in, I had been underpaid.
How would you have known?
So I would not have known
Right.
had she not told me, but then I did have a friend in HR, and I talked to her and I tried to kind of get some counsel from her in terms of like, well, how does this happen? What should I do? That kind of thing. And I think what happened was I think I just wasn't getting the level of bonuses and increases while I was out in the field
Mm, mhm.
because I was a young single woman and my counterparts were married men whose spouses did not work. And I think my male manager, for whatever reason, thought that they needed the money more than I did. And this
As
is
you
back.
say it, I just wanna pause you there because for anyone listening, as you say that, I'm sure that there's someone who is earlier in their career, not saying young necessarily, but earlier in their career, who will listen to that statement and say that is completely ridiculous and outrageous. But in context at that time, that was a very um, common way that salaries were allocated and monies were allocated. And in fact, I think I remember Oprah talking about that.
Really?
Yes, but go ahead. I wanted to offer that because it sounds outrageous and
Yeah.
it sounds like something that wouldn't happen today. I don't suspect that it doesn't happen today, but
Right. Right. But you don't know, right?
you don't know.
Unless you know somebody, or
Yes.
unless you have someone, you know, fortunately, I had someone who advocated for me, who let me know, who had a
Yeah.
man. She happened to be it's interesting. She was a female manager who said, you know what, this is not right. You
Yeah.
need to make
Are
some.
you still in touch with that fairy godmother? Because that's what I
I
call
I
it.
know. I am not. I am not. And so I was only making 35,000. My first job, I only made $35,000 a year.
Wow.
So that was my first job as a pharmaceutical sales rep.
And you
Um,
thought it was great.
I was happy.
Let's
Makes me
let's
very
okay,
happy.
let's talk about sales because I think sales jobs, especially coming right out of school or out of college, are phenomenal training grounds for moving forward in your career, even if you don't stay in them. But I do know that there are some early career, recent graduate talent that dismiss sales jobs or poo-poo sales jobs as their first jobs. They don't see them as a through way to success. What do you
Really?
think you learned? What do you think you learned in sales?
Um, so I learned to take initiative, right? Because it was me. I didn't have a team. I didn't have an office. I got up every day. I didn't have someone looking over my shoulder. My manager did come out with me from time to time, but I had to still demonstrate and show the numbers, right?
Mhm.
And that I was making the calls. And so it definitely helped me with my ability to take initiative. It helped me with my ability to develop relationships and to manage, like not just develop them, but then manage the relationship and care for the relationship over time. What I liked about pharmaceutical sales that was different from other kinds of sales is that one, they gave me my book of business. I didn't have to go out and dial for my dollars and all that stuff. Like that would not have been me.
Or cultivating an existing book and
Right, I
growing
was
it.
cultivating an existing book, which is so it's more of, a consultative selling is what I like to call it. It wasn't the hardcore, like I was trying to sell a IT system, a SaaS
Right,
system to a company, you know?
right, right.
Um, so it's really developing relationships. And it's interesting, so that was, the ability to cultivate relationships, which has literally been one of the best skills I could have learned. Because every organization I enter into now, that's the first thing you have to do, you know.
Mhm.
And then also, it gave me tough skin, to be honest.
Resilience.
Resilience. I did not have. I was someone who was not like not. I don't want to say a people pleaser, but I didn't. I wanted people to like me, and it was it. I took it at heart when people didn't like me.
Yeah.
And so I grew some really tough skin in pharmaceutical sales because even though you had a book of business and you had they gave you the doctors to call on, the nurses, some of the gatekeepers, some of the receptionists, they could be pretty brutal, pretty
Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah.
And so after a while, it wears on you, you know. And after a while, you kind of think of yourself as like a high paid caterer, and so it's just it gets to be a lot. So for me,
Had to bring the donuts and the cookies and the coffee and try to get into
yes,
the office. Absolutely.
yes, yeah,
Absolutely.
for 5 minutes, of time, so
Right.
you gain some thick skin, which to me again is a great skill to have, um, because you need it, especially as you continue to progress through your career, especially as you continue to move up in your career because it gets a lot lonelier as you move
Right.
up too. And so for me, those are the skills that I think I took away. And then the ability just to advocate for myself and to, make sure that I had agency, I think also.
Yeah. I know that you are also more naturally an introvert, and maybe even a little bit shy, although you're not coming across as shy. But I would imagine that that job helped you overcome some shyness early in your career. Would you say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you have to figure out a way. And as an introverts, it's not that we can't be outgoing and gregarious. We like more of the one-on-one, like
Mhm.
big groups, big presentations, big audiences. Like it draws a lot of energy. And so
Mhm.
for me, yes, it definitely helped me gain better communication skills, kind of one-on-one, the ability to put myself out there, and connect with people that I didn't have perhaps anything in common with, which
Yeah,
again is a great skill. Um, but as an introvert, it wasn't as challenging as even nowadays, like to do, huge presentations to big audiences, it's draining for me. It's
yeah,
not my natural set, you know.
yeah. You are asked to be the class of 2027 graduation speaker for the Fuqua School of Business, and you're wishing the graduates well as they go into their next stages of their careers, what are one or two things that you're giving them as they depart?
Yeah, I would say to remember things happen for a reason. Keep your options open. Success is a journey, not a destination. I would say be known to others and know others.
Yes.
That's important skill, I think. I think I struggled with that initially. And so that's been an important one, to just know others and be known by others. And chart your own course. Do not define your self-worth based on a brand, based on what you do or where you do it at. And to surround yourself with individuals who both push you forward, lift you up, but also there to catch you,
Yeah.
So.
Words to live by and learn by. Shari, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
This was so much fun. This was not what I thought at all. Questions.
In a good way, I hope.
Right, in a great way. In a great way. Absolutely. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited for you, Leilani. I'm so proud. You continue to raise the bar and to reinvent yourself. I just love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Your First Job is a production of Giant Steps, LLC, a company working at the intersection of strategy, culture, career, and education. I'm Leilani Brown, CEO and host of the show. Many thanks to our executive producer, Sam Osborne, our production team at Relics Corps, and to Maxwell Brown for composing and producing our show music. You can learn more about our company and the podcast by visiting giantstepsllc.com. Thank you for listening.